Virtually all the theology books out there tell us demons are fallen angels. This is the prevailing theory offered by most scholars, pastors, and theologians today. In GotQuestions.org, they have an article called What Does the Bible Say About Demons? The first 4 words are these: demons are fallen angels. And I love that website, but this is an area where I would disagree. I bring it up because it represents the conventional wisdom in modern times in the Western world. It's also what I believed for most of my life, that when Satan rebelled against God, he took a third of the angels with him, and that these angels are the demons who make up his kingdom today. The same demons that Jesus was constantly casting out of people when he walked the earth 2,000 years ago. The only problem is, the Bible never says that, and that is not what the ancient peoples believed. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a Satan, and there were indeed fallen angels. However, the ancient people, including the writers of the Bible, believed that demons came from somewhere else. In fact, by the end of today's episode, you'll see that Jesus himself used an expression that tells us exactly where the demons came from, and we can prove from his own words that they are not fallen angels. So why do modern people see things so differently? I find this to be weird, and I'd like to explore why this contemporary theory is not in the Bible. Turn to Genesis 6, and let's get weird. Welcome to Weird Stuff in the Bible, where we explore scripture passages that are bizarre, perplexing, or just plain weird. This is Luke Taylor, and today we're going to be talking about how demons are not fallen angels. But don't worry, I will also tell you what demons actually are. And if you're new, we are in a series this year. We're looking at places where the book of Enoch intersects with the Bible. Now, if you're a longtime listener to this podcast, you may have heard me teach on this before. The reason that I'm revisiting this issue today is because this is a major plot point, you might say, of the book of Enoch. And so I simply can't ignore it. Now, if you have been listening for a while, you might also be thinking, man, we sure have spent a lot of time in the book of Enoch. And I hope you've been getting as much out of it as I have. This is the longest series I've ever done, probably the longest series I ever will do. And we are just about done with it. In a few weeks, I really want to start into a new series. And it does not mean I'm never going to pick up the book of Enoch again. Like, I have more that I'm planning to explore in Enoch. Some of it's going to come later this year. I have a couple more series that I'd like to share with you before this year wraps up. I've been learning a lot of things the past few months, and I just can't wait to share them with you. I really want to do a series on like the spiritual realm and a kind of a focus on the underworld realm. It's known as Sheol in the Old Testament. I have a series I'm planning on the Tower of Babel, a short series on curses. And so stick with the podcast, guys. We have some great things ahead. But last week, I revisited this idea of how the Watchers transgressed a lot of boundaries, and they mixed things that God did not want mixed. 1, they broke a boundary between heaven and earth. 2, they broke a boundary between spirit and flesh. They transgressed a boundary that was between angel and human. And all of this, it created the giants of the pre-flood world. So Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and these are some verses that I'm sure you're extremely familiar with them by this point. I'm going to read them in the New King James this time. It says, "Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." And so the Bible speaks of this as the genesis of the giants. Okay, no pun intended. The book of Enoch, though, it goes into more detail or expands on these ideas. And we have spent a lot of the year studying all the implications of this. But most of the focus has actually been on the sons of God, also known as the Watcher. More of the focus has been on that side of things. For today and for next week, I want to take a look at what the Watchers created. So the Watchers created these beings who are known as the giants, or the Nephilim, as some translations will say. I prefer that they would just say giant. all right? There's a little bit of confusion over what Nephilim means. And I'll tell you, if you don't want an etymology lesson, you might want to skip ahead for like a minute or so. The etymology is like where words came from. I know not everybody's into that, so just a warning, I want to talk about that for a minute. Most translators will tell you that Nephilim means the fallen ones. However, Dr. Michael Heiser, who I once had the blessing of interviewing, and I shared that a couple months back on the podcast, he's an Old Testament scholar who says that this is probably not what the word Nephilim means. He says the word for fallen ones does show up elsewhere in the Bible. He says one place is Ezekiel 32, but it's spelled differently there. It's more like Nophilim. And, calling the giants the fallen ones, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like it would make more sense to call their fathers, the watchers, that they are the fallen ones. However, the Aramaic word, Nephilia, and that word literally means giant. Nephilim is probably a word that's borrowed from the Aramaic language, and it comes from that. There's actually a lot of Aramaic words in your Old Testament, and Aramaic is a very similar language to Hebrew, and so it's not strange to find like a random Aramaic word show up in a verse here and there. And that's probably what Nephilim means. Nephilim probably just simply means giants. And you can kind of prove that if you go to the Septuagint translation of the Old Testament. Septuagint is in Greek. It's from the Second Temple period, which is the time period of Jesus. And the Septuagint version of Genesis 6, it renders the word Nephilim as the Greek word gigantes. And of course, that means giant. And so there, end of etymology lesson. But the book of Enoch, it was also written in Greek, and it also speaks about these gigantes. All right, so for today's episode, we're going to finish up Enoch 15. And just for a reminder or a catch up on the context, like Enoch has been passing messages back and forth between the watchers who are chained up in the underworld and God who is up in heaven. And so it's like Enoch keeps getting on the elevator, going up and down, back and forth. And right now he's being told by God what to go back and say to the watchers who are down in the underworld. And so we're going to be looking at some more of that today. Again, focusing more so on the children of the watchers. Now, Enoch 10, chapter 10, verse 9, it had addressed them briefly before. It told us to Gabriel, God said, "Go, Gabriel, to the bastards, to the half-breeds, to the sons of miscegenation, and destroy the sons of the watchers from among the sons of men. Then them against one another in a war of destruction, and length of days they will not have." So, by the way, sorry to throw the B word in there, right? It's not a bad word. It simply means children of a questionable conception, all right? You also see that word in Deuteronomy. And that I bring it up because that's a major theme for today, all right? When the watchers had transgressed the boundaries, they created these beings who are half one thing and half another thing. And that's a key point here, all right? So when the watchers appealed their sentencing down under the earth, they petitioned God that their giant children might not be slaughtered. And here's what God says now in Enoch 15. It reads, "And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger, and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them." So here is what Enoch 15 is teaching us, that when a giant dies, and we know all these giants, if they don't die before the flood, they'll die in the flood, but it tells us that when they die, their spirit is consigned to the earth. They are not being consigned to hell for all eternity, and they can't repent and go up to heaven. For the time being, their assignment is on earth. And we're going to talk about this a lot more in the next few weeks, that there's different realms that God wants to keep separate. There's heavenly realm spirits, and there are earthly realm spirits. There are underworld realm spirits. And the spirits that are from the Nephilim, these are classified by God that they are to be earthly spirits, okay? So I'll get into that more in a few weeks, but for today, let's talk about the demons themselves. And there are three theories that I often hear about of where demons come from. So the first one is pretty well articulated by gotquestions.org. Again, I love this website. I've used it more times than I can count. I think it's very reliable. And even this article, again, it's titled, "What Does the Bible Say About Demons?" And I'd say it's like 90 or 95% true. But the claim that it makes in its opening paragraph is simply wrong. And I'll link to this article if you want to read it for yourself in the show notes. But here's how this article begins. The demons are fallen angels, as Revelation 12:9 indicates. Quote, "The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him." Satan's fall from heaven is symbolically described in Isaiah 14:12 through 15 and Ezekiel 28:12 through 15. When he fell, Satan took some of the angels with him, 1/3 of them, according to Revelation 12:4. Jude 1:6 also mentions angels who sinned. So biblically, again, this is what the article is saying, demons are fallen angels who, along with Satan, chose to rebel against God. Now, I just want you to notice from that paragraph, it just simply made the claim 2 times that demons are fallen angels. And it cited some verses, but none of those verse references actually claim that demons and fallen angels are the same thing. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I believe in fallen angels and I believe in demons. And I believe that, like it said, 1/3 of the angels rebelled against God with Satan. Now, I would say that happened progressively over a long period of time. Like, I think Satan fell first, and then later there were those 200 watchers who fell. And I think there were more angelic rebellions, probably around the time of the Tower of Babel and after that. So a lot of the things this article says, I agree with it in principle. But tucked away there in that opening paragraph was this claim that this means demons are fallen angels. And the Bible simply does not say that anywhere. There's another theory of where demons came from, and this is related to the gap theory. So the gap theory states that between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, there was this long gap of time that lasted thousands or maybe even millions of years where other races and other beings had been born and died. And that the demons are the lingering spirits of those beings, pre-Adamic races, essentially. Adam being the first human, but some say that there were perhaps pre-Adamic races and that maybe entire civilizations had existed prior to Adam and Eve. And then God, at least once, maybe multiple times, just had to wipe out their whole existence and like wipe the slate clean and start again. And so when it says in Genesis 1:2 that the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters, well, this theory says that this is after God had just wiped away everything again, and he was about to start over, this time with Adam and Eve, and he was starting over on a planet that was already polluted with the spirits of ancient civilizations. Now, personally, I have not been convinced of the theories out there that there were pre-Adamic civilizations or species. I think those theories are interesting. Like I've read books on this. I know there's some verses that you can kind of look at and kind of see that there. So I have books on my shelf that teach this. I don't think it's something heretical necessarily, but personally, I have not been convinced that this could be true. A third theory of where demons come from, and I guess I'll call this the Enochian view, okay? It's this, or I'll call it the Second Temple view. That might be a better name. It's the idea put forward in Enoch 15 here that the spirits of the giants were cursed to wander the earth and torment humanity, and it said this will continue up until Judgment Day. And so we've already read the verses in Enoch that kind of lay this idea out. The word that Enoch used was evil spirits. And you also see this phrase commonly throughout the Bible. And notice here, I'm going to read some Bible verses, and notice here how often the evil spirits are linked with physical health issues. Luke 7:21. In that very hour, he cured many of infirmities, afflictions, and evil spirits, and to many blind, he gave sight. Luke 8:2. And certain women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom had come 7 demons. Acts 19:11 and 12. Now, God worked unusual miracles by the hands of Paul, so that even handkerchiefs or aprons were brought from his body to the sick, and the diseases left them, and the evil spirits went out of them. So, what does spirits have to do with physical health? Well, let's remind ourselves of what Enoch 15 said. It said, "And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble." So the spirits of affliction, like that is a perfect example of what they do. They can cause physical maladies on people. Remember this story from Luke 13, verses 11 through 13. "And behold, there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bent over, and could in no way raise herself up. But when Jesus saw her, he called her to him, and said to her, 'Woman, you are loosed from your infirmity.' And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight and glorified God." Enoch also told us that these evil spirits will oppress humans. Well, notice what Scripture says in Acts 10:38. "God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power, who went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him." Now, one more thing I want to mention is that Nephilim spirits, according to Enoch 15, it said they cause trouble. Like we see an evil spirit stirring up Saul against David in 1 Samuel 16. We see evil spirits causing dissension between Abimelech and his men in Judges 9. James 3 warns us that demons can cause us to become bitter and jealous and selfish with our fellow man. So keep that in mind as well, that fight that you had with your spouse, that conflict that you might be having at work, that friend that you can't get along with anymore. Like these could actually be from the influence of demons who are doing exactly what Enoch 15 said they would do, cause trouble. Now, one more thing I want to look at today is this phrase for evil spirits that's found in Acts 5:16. It says, "Also a multitude gathered from the surrounding cities to Jerusalem, bringing sick people and those who were tormented by unclean spirits, and they were all healed." In the New Testament, these spirits, these demons, are sometimes called impure spirits or unclean spirits. And actually, unclean is the most common description of demons in the New Testament. Matthew 10 makes it clear, like these are all the same thing. These are all the same type of spirits, demons. Why are they called unclean? Well, if you've spent a lot of time reading the book of Leviticus, first of all, I feel sorry for you. Second of all, the word unclean is very common in Leviticus for the types of things that the Israelites should avoid. For example, the food laws, they seem to be centered around this idea of avoiding animals that have mixed characteristics. Sea animals that have skin instead of scales, those are quote unquote mixed, and they should be avoided. Winged insects that crawl instead of fly, these are mixed animals, and they are declared unclean. Actions that violated the separation between life and death, things like touching a carcass, those would make you ceremonially unclean. It didn't necessarily mean that you had sinned, but you simply had to be clean before you could participate in the tabernacle worship. Now, why? Well, because you had violated a boundary or a category distinction. And a lot of laws in the Mosaic Law, they revolve around category distinctions. And all these laws, they might not necessarily apply anymore. They do teach us valuable spiritual principles, and we can see how how seriously he takes categorical purity. And so the phrase unclean spirit or unclean, that implied an impure mixture. And I recently found out, whenever we're running out of a bag of coffee at my house, if we don't have enough coffee grounds in the bag for a whole new pot, my wife will mix that bag of coffee with another bag of coffee. Like even if they are completely different brands. And I told her, no, we don't do this here. That is an impure mixture. You do not mix the Black Rifle with the Dunkin' Donuts. That is unclean. That is blasphemy. Okay, like we're going back to Old Testament food restrictions at my house until we figure this coffee thing out. When I'm drinking coffee, I want it to be pure. Pure basically means to be 100% of one thing. Okay, I want 100% Dunkin' Donuts or 100% Black Rifle, or it could be 100% something else. It better be 0% Starbucks. But here's what I also don't want. I don't want 50% one thing and 50% another thing, because that means it's no longer pure. But I do appreciate that she does make me coffee each day, keeps me caffeinated, keeps me going for you guys. So God wanted the watchers to be 100% watcher, and for the humans to be 100% human. But when watchers descended and mated with the human women, their children were 50% watcher and 50% human being, and that was a problem for God. So they are impure mixtures, or they are unclean. So that's why Enoch 15 tells us evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies because they are born from men. And from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. And theologian Dr. Joel Muddamalle, he writes, that the term unclean suggests an unholy mixture that hints back to the Nephilim of Genesis 6. The Nephilim were the result of an unholy or unclean union between the sons of God and the daughters of man, so the name unclean spirit is fitting. And if you read Second Temple literature, as I said, this is what Jesus and the other Bible writers and the Jewish people of his day, this is like what they studied, what they believe. They said that if you read that literature, you will see in there that the phrase unclean spirit is a phrase that draws specific attention to the fact that these were spirits of the giants. Okay, calling them an evil spirit, that's accurate. It's more somewhat general. Okay, even a fallen angel could be said to be an evil spirit. It is a spirit who is evil. But calling them an unclean spirit, that's more specifically drawing attention to the origin of those spirits. In his book, Demons, What the Bible Really Says About the Powers of Darkness, Michael Heiser writes that the phrase unclean spirits was used by the Second Temple writers to, quote, draw attention to the origin of these evil spirits as the result of an unnatural mixture and the subsequent emergence from and contact with the corpses of the dead Nephilim. So, the Bible does not give us an origin story for the demons in the way that the book of Enoch does. But does that mean the Bible is neutral on this question? Well, like when I touched on this episode, or on this topic in episode 25, that was a couple years ago, I said back then, the Bible was more silent on this topic. But I'm going to be a bit more concrete in my answer today. I'm going to say emphatically, no, the Bible is not neutral. The Bible actually does say that demons are the departed spirits of the Nephilim. How? Because that's what the phrase unclean spirit means. That was the cultural understanding behind that term at the time of Jesus. And so that's exactly what Jesus and the writers of the Gospels called them. Jesus wasn't just picking a random phrase to call these things whenever he called them unclean spirits. That phrase had a particular meaning in the times in which those people lived. They knew what it meant. He wouldn't have said it and meant something else like fallen angels, because nobody in those days would have thought that unclean spirits were fallen angels. If he meant fallen angels, he would have said something else. Okay, just like if I write down the phrase lame duck president, okay, if you follow politics, you might have heard the phrase like lame duck thrown around a bit. That means like it's during the last couple months that somebody's in office, if a politician has been voted out, but he still sits in office for a couple months after the election until the new guy takes over. So if you follow 21st century American politics, like you might be familiar with that phrase, calling somebody a lame duck. But 1,000 years from now, nobody's going to know what that means. Okay, if I wrote down on a piece of paper that somebody was a lame duck, and then 2,000 years from now, somebody discovers that piece of paper, and they would be like, what did Luke mean whenever he said a lame duck president? A paralyzed mallard? Like, what did Luke mean by this? Okay. If someone took the time to understand my culture, well, then they could understand perfectly what a weird phrase like lame duck president, what that means. Well, in the same way, Jesus grew up in a particular culture. Words have meaning, and the phrase unclean spirits meant a particular thing in Second Temple Judaism. And so the use of that phrase in your Bible, that means without any doubt that demons are the spirits of giants, not pre-Adamic races and not fallen angels. Now, you may be wondering, why does God allow evil spirits like demons to roam the earth? Like, why not just send them to hell? What does he have planned for them later? Well, that is what Enoch 16 is going to be about. And so That's what we're going to be looking at next time. The whole chapter, which it's only like 4 verses, but we're going to cover it all. And then we'll be done with our Enoch exploration for the time being. So make sure you're subscribed, and then you can get everything that's to come. Now, in closing, does this particular view of demons, does it have any relevance to us today? Like, in one sense, no, not really. I mean, we still need to cast them out, right? We don't want to leave them in. But in another sense, this brings greater context to our battles with these unseen fiends. These aren't just fallen angels. Our battles with demons are battles with a race of beings who were created to dominate humans and steal our dominion of planet Earth. The book of Enoch told us their goals: to afflict, to destroy, to attack, to do battle, to work destruction on the earth, and to cause trouble. Well, here's something else, and it might make your next read through of the Old Testament a little more interesting. Those giants that David and the Israelites would fight in the Old Testament are the same spirits that you battle against today. Okay, think about this. The spirit of Goliath is out there somewhere in the world today. The spirit of Og, king of Bashan, it's somewhere out there. The Old Testament tells us what these beings are like. And more importantly, it shows us that they can be defeated. I did a recent episode about why we should be merciless with evil spirits. And you notice in the Bible that we're not called to empathize and sympathize with them. We are called to drive them out. Just like the Israelites were told to be with the Canaanites in the conquest stories of ancient Israel. This is a major stumbling block for many people, even Christians who read the Bible. Like they read that, Israel would be told to go into a city, wipe everyone out, leave no one alive, not even the children. And that sounds absolutely merciless. It sounds so cruel to us. Until you study the return of the Nephilim after the flood, how they permeated the land of Canaan, especially after the Tower of Babel incident. We'll be talking about that when we get into the Tower of Babel stuff later this year. But why would God tell his people to be so merciless with the Canaanites? Well, it's because those were Nephilim bloodlines. They were irredeemably, unrepentantly evil. Their purpose was to stop the Messiah, but God stopped them first. And that's why ancient Israel was merciless against the giants, and that's why we should be merciless with the giants that we face today. And just as Israel had to be continuously reminded not to fear them, that's what we need to remember as well. The same God who told us in Joshua 1:9, "Be strong and of good courage, do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go," is the same God who told us in Luke 10:19, "Behold, I give you the authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you." Be merciless with the spirits of the giants. We throw down, we cast out, we take back what the enemy stole, we take no prisoners, and we don't give them an inch, because God has already told you, you will win. They are just half-human offspring of the sons of God, but you are a son of God. And if David could do it with a slingshot and a stone, you can do it with the authority of Jesus Christ. So if you think that slaying giants sounds weird, I hope you'll be a little more weird today too. Thanks for listening. God bless you for sticking around till the end, and we'll see you next time on Weird Stuff in the Bible.